hit the button there. Okay. And I think we're good. I think we're good to go. So anyway, yeah, The End of Time by Wallace West. We're going to see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. We can switch scenes over here. Oh, yeah, so tonight's plan, yeah, so we're going to have Short Story Sunday. Then I'm going to take a little break. Then we're coming back for movie night. We're going to be watching Suddenly by, with Frank Sinatra, a public domain film. So, but then I found like a pretty nice copy of it too, 720p. It's going to be pretty sweet. And then after that, we get through another episode of The Wolf Among Us. And then after that, I don't know, we'll figure it out. We're going to do something. I don't know what. I know tomorrow's a big Halo night. That's all I know. That's all I know. But let's get on with it. We're here to listen to a story. So kick back, relax, and let's read a little story. Oh, we're finding some good friends on Twitch now, by the way. Yeah. It's that's been interesting. The End of Time. Hello, yeah. So hello to my friends over on Twitch and over on YouTube. Yeah, for the duration of the Rona, story time is it's going out there, getting out there. Chris Alberti's here. Good morning, Chris Alberti. Alrighty. The End of Time by Wallace West. This e-text was produced from Astounding Stories, March 1933. Extensive research did not uncover any evidence that the U.S. copyright on this publication was renewed. I like it when that happens. Good for us. And I would say it sucks for the magazine, except the magazine's like long out of business. So it's not like going to be there anyway. The End of Time. Thank you. By the way, thank you. I will be stopping periodically to catch up with chat and the like, but we're going to get good segments going. I thank you in advance for anyone throwing down hosts right now. Or if anyone wants to let their friends know about it, don't forget there's the share stream button. It's put somewhere on this page. You can let your friends on Facebook or Twitter, or whichever you prefer, know that you like this kind of stuff. Maybe they will too. You never know. The End of Time by Wallace West. There's no doubt of it. The little chemist pushed steel-bowed spectacles up on his high forehead and peered at his dinner guest with excited blue eyes. Time will come to an end at 6 o'clock this morning. Jack Barron, young radio engineer at the Rothafel Radio Laboratories and protege of Dr. Manthus, his host, laughed heartily. "Oh, what a yarn you spin, Doctor," he said. "Write it for the movies." "But it's true," insisted the older man. "Something is paralyzing our time sense. The final stroke will occur about daybreak." "Bosh. You mean the Earth will stop rotating, the stars blink out?" "Not at all. Such things have nothing to do with time. You may know your short waves, but your general education has been sadly neglected." The scientist picked up a weighty volume. "Maybe this will explain what I mean. It's from Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Listen. Time is not something which subsists of itself, or which inheres in things as an objective determination, and therefore remains, when abstraction is made of the subjective conditions of the intuition of things. For in the former case it would be something real, yet without presenting to any power of perception any real object. In the latter case, as an order of determination inherent in things themselves, it could not be antecedent to things as their condition, nor discerned or intuited by means of synthetical propositions a priori. But all this is quite possible when we regard time as merely the subjective condition under which all our intuitions take place." There, does that make it clear? "Clear as mud," grinned Barron. "Kant is too deep for me." "I'll give you another proof," snapped Manthus. "Look at your watch." The other drew out his timepiece. Slowly his face sobered. "Why, I can't see the second hand," he exclaimed. "It is just a blur." "Exactly. Now look at the minute hand. Can you see it move?" "Yes, quite clearly." "What time is it?" 1:30. "Oh, great Scott! So that's why you spun that yarn." Barron hoisted his 6'1" out of the easy chair. "It's way past your bedtime. I didn't mean to keep you up." He stared again at his watch as if it had betrayed him. It seems we've just finished dinner. I must have dozed off." "Nonsense," sniffed Manthus. "You arrived at 8 o'clock, an hour late. You and I and my daughter had dinner. Then the two of us came in here. We smoked a cigarette or two. Now it's 1:30. Do you need more proof?" "Your theory's all wet somewhere," the younger man protested with a shaky laugh. "If my watch isn't broken, time must be speeding up, not stopping." "That comes from depending on your senses instead of your intelligence. Think a minute. If the watch seems running double speed, that would indicate that your perception of its movements had slowed down 50%. Barron sank back into his chair, leaned forward, and gripped his curly black hair with trembling fingers. He felt dizzy and befuddled. "June," called the doctor. Then to the agitated youth he added, "Watch my daughter when she comes in, and you see if you still think I'm crazy." As he spoke, the door flew open, and a slim, golden-haired girl shot into the room like a motion picture character in one of those comedies which is run double speed. Jack's eyes could hardly follow her movements. She came behind her father and threw one slim arm about his shoulders. She spoke, but her usually throaty voice was only a high-pitched squeak. "I can't understand you, dear," interrupted her father. "Write it down." June is using a drug which I prepared to keep her time sense normal," Manthus explained as the girl's pen raced over a pad. "That's why she disappeared after dinner. I wanted you to get the full effect. Now, read this." "The deadline is approaching," the girl's message read. "You'd better take your injection now. It's 2:30 a.m. "All right, prepare the hypodermics," directed the chemist. He had to repeat this in a falsetto voice before June understood. "Make one for Jack, too." June went out at express train speed. Barron glanced at his watch again. The minute hand was moving with the speed at which the second hand usually traveled. 3:15 already. When he looked up, June was in the room again with 2 hypodermic needles. Quickly she removed her father's coat and made the injection. "Let her fix you up too, boy, unless you want to become a graven image," commanded Manthus. His voice, which started at the ordinary pitch, went up like a siren at the end as the drug took effect. Dazedly, Jack held out his arm. Okay, so are we kind of up to speed? This is a weird start to a book. Very weird start. Yeah. Oh, today's the 14th. Oh, wow, yeah, that could happen, yeah. Where we at? I'm just going to take a little sip of coffee here. Okay, so what I'm a little unsure on whether this doctor has discovered that time itself is falling to pieces and is coming up with some kind of solution to try and deal with it, or if this is only his own experiments with it, which is actually causing the issue for them personally, and it's not the entire world. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out as we go. The sting of the needle was followed by a roaring in his ears, like 100 Niagaras. The room seemed to pitch and quiver. We were reading something the other day which talked about like 100 Niagaras. I think there was a Sherlock Holmes. They had a very similar thing. All right. The sting of the needle was followed by a roaring in his ears like 100 Niagaras. The room seemed to pitch and quiver. Staring down at the watch he still clutched, Jack saw the hands slow down and at last resume their accustomed pace. Gradually, the unpleasant sensations died away. "Well, that was a close shave," commented the doctor, drawing a long breath. "I wouldn't have waited so long except that I wanted to experience the sensation of coming back from the edge of the infinite. Not very nice. like being pulled out of a whirlpool. It's 4:30 now. Took us an hour to return to normal, though it only seemed minutes. We have an hour and a half before the end. June, have you noticed anything unusual on the streets?" "Oh, yes," whispered his daughter, her usually piquant face pinched and white. "I've been watching from the balcony. It's dreadful. The people creep about like things in a nightmare." Manthus tried to reassure her. On his face was a great sadness, which was, however, overshadowed by a greater scientific curiosity. "There's nothing we can do for them now," he said, "but we must learn all we can. Let's go down and watch the city die." They descended in an automatic elevator and hurried through the hotel lobby. The lights of Fifth Avenue gleamed as brightly as ever. The streets near the lower end of Central Park still were crowded, but such crowds! They moved with infinite languor. Each step required many seconds. Yet the people apparently did not know that anything unusual was happening. Many perhaps were puzzled because their watches seemed to be misbehaving, but this did not stop their conversation as they traveled home from theaters or nightclubs. Two white-haired men passed by, engaged in a discussion of business affairs. Their voices were pitched so low that they were almost inaudible to the trio of watchers, while their gestures looked like the slow waving of the antennae of deep-sea plants. "My God, man!" cried Barron, at last awakening from his horror-stricken silence. "Why didn't you warn the world? This is criminal. If what you say is true, all these people will become rooted in their tracks at 6 o'clock like characters from The Sleeping Beauty." "I only discovered the danger a week ago while working out a chemical formula." Manthus's eyes showed the strain he was enduring. "It was a very delicate piece of work, having to do with experiments I am making on chlorophyll. Quick adjustments, you know. I'd done the thing before many times, but last week I couldn't mix the ingredients fast enough to get the necessary reaction. Puzzled, I made further experiments. The result was that I discovered my perception of time was slowing down. I tested June and found the same thing. There was but one conclusion." "But the drug we are using, how did you hit on that?" "I recalled that such drugs as hashish greatly speed up the time sense. An addict is able to review his entire past life or plan an elaborate crime between 2 heartbeats, so I collected a small supply of the stuff." "But hashish in large doses is deadly, and I've heard that users of it sooner or later develop homicidal mania. Run amok, as they say in India." That is some crazy reefer madness language going on right there. A little bit of hashish, and sooner or later you develop homicidal mania. Run amok, as they say in India. "True enough," admitted the chemist, "but Andreev, the Russian, you know, recently worked out a formula to neutralize the deadly effects of the drug, but retain its time-expanding effort for medical purposes. I've added that to the pure drug. There isn't enough of it in New York to keep all these people normal for 5 minutes. Why should I have frightened the poor things?" He relapsed into silence, and the others found no heart to ask further questions as they watched the coming of the end of a world. The procession of passers-by had thinned somewhat by now. The street lights had grown dim. There was a look of increasing puzzlement on the faces of the people who remained. Something was wrong. They knew not what. Floating along the sidewalk like a figure in a slow-motion picture came a tiny tot of 3. She was sobbing. Great tears formed with painful slowness and slid down her flushed cheeks. "Oh, she's lost," exclaimed June. "Here, darling, I'll find your mamma." She picked up the child and looked up and down the street. The mother was not in sight. Automatically, she turned to a policeman who stood nearby. "Oh, officer," she said quickly, "this girl is lost. Will you—" She stiffened in dismay. The police officer was staring through her as if his eyes had not registered her approach. Slowly, his gaze came into focus. A puzzled look came over his Irish face. He spoke. It was only a blurred rumble. "What can I do for her, father?" June cried, turning away from the officer in despair. "She's dying, see? Couldn't we give her some of the drug?" "There's only enough for us," her father replied firmly. "Oh, but she'll be dead in an hour." "Oh, I'm not so sure of that. Perhaps only in a state resembling catalepsy. We must wait. Jack, take her into the lobby. Put her on a sofa there." Dawn was paling the blue-black sky as the radio engineer returned. The street lights fluttered fitfully and at last died. The streets had become deserted, although groups still eddied slowly about the subway kiosks. 5:45, whispered Manthus. "The end should come at any moment." As he spoke, a white-garbed street sweeper who had been leaning on his broom at the curb ever since the onlookers had reached the sidewalk decided to move on at last. With infinite slowness, his foot came up. He poised, swung forward. Then, the universal paralysis overcoming him, remained in a strangely ludicrous position for a moment before crashing downward on his face. That's interesting. You actually lose your balance in this. As far as they could see in the semi-darkness, others were falling. A few, balanced with feet wide apart, remained standing like statues. Those who collapsed writhed slowly a time or two, and were still. After the thudding of the bodies had ended, the silence became ghastly. Not an awakening bird twittered in the trees of Central Park. Not a sheep bleated in the enclosure. Except for their own breathing and the sighing of the wind, not a sound. Then a faraway clock boomed 6 notes. The noise made them start and turn pale faces toward each other. "Come," said the doctor heavily. "It's all over. We might as well go up. We'll have to walk. All power will be off. 20 stories. "Good morning, Tillable Cat." Tillable Cat. How you doing? Glad you could join us. Okay, so just in case for people who've just arrived, a scientist, his daughter, and the scientist's friend have discovered that time is coming to an end, and and everything is slowing down to like an incredible slow speed. However, the scientist has managed to invent a drug which speeds up their own metabolisms, basically, so they're able to continue moving in real time while everything else is crashing around them. The lobby of the Hotel Atchison, on the roofs of which the penthouse apartment was located, was empty now, except for a few clerks and bellboys. These sat with bowed heads before their grills or on their benches as if they had merely succumbed to the unpardonable sin of sleeping on duty. But they did not breathe. June clung to her father's arm as they crossed noiselessly over the heavy carpet. "The city will be a charnel house when these bodies start to decompose." Baron hesitated. "Shouldn't we get out of town while there's a chance?" Manthus shook his head. No, I'm convinced these people aren't dead. They're simply outside of time. Change cannot affect them. If I'm not mistaken, they will remain just the same indefinitely." "But there will be fires throughout the city." "Oh, not many. The electricity is off. The day is warm, so no furnaces are going. Not even a rat is left to nibble matches, for the animals must be affected in the same way that humans are. The world is asleep." After mounting interminable stairs, they regained the apartment and went out on the balcony. It was full daylight now, but not a smoke plume trailed from tall chimneys. Not a bird was on the wing. Elevated trains stood on their tracks, passengers and guards asleep inside. "I don't understand," muttered Baron. "The sun comes up, the wind blows. How can that be if there's no time?" Might this not be some plague? In a way, you are right, boy. It is a plague which has paralyzed man's sense of time. You have become involved by not remembering Kant's axiom that time is purely subjective. It exists in the mind only. It and space are the only ideas inherently in our brains. They allow us to conduct ourselves among a vast collection of things in themselves, which time does not affect. But wait a moment. Granting that time is in the mind rather than in the outside world, what will happen if the time sense is paralyzed? Won't the effect be similar to hypnosis, whereby a man is reduced to a cataleptic state? The thought chain, which usually passes ceaselessly through the brain, is halted. Seeing that the engineer still looked puzzled, June interposed. It's something like enchantment, she explained. The old legends are full of it. The Sleeping Beauty, Brunhilde, Rip Van Winkle. I'm convinced that in ancient times a few persons knew how to draw a fairy ring about those they wished to injure or protect, placing them thus outside the reach of time and change. This has now happened the world over, perhaps through some drift in the ether or germ in the brain. That is what we must find out, so we can solve the mystery and take steps to reawaken the world. Perhaps this will help, interrupted Manthus in his turn. Wesley West, how you doing? Hello there. See you over there on the YouTubes. What's going on? As you know, all the great scientists, Einstein, Jeans, Pavlov, are convinced that everything in the universe is a form of vibration. Even thought, they believe, operates somewhat like a very short radio wave. What if some agency, either inside or outside the universe, began interfering on the thought wave channel? Granting your supposition, Jack was on his own ground now, a transmission would be impossible on that channel. Exactly. Well, that's what I am convinced is taking place. I'm a chemist, not an engineer. I've given you the lead. You'll have to do the rest. Do you think you might locate such interference? Possibly. I'll do my best. Fine. Of course, if it is coming from outside the stratosphere, as the cosmic rays do, there is no hope. But if someone is broadcasting such a devilish wave from an earthly station, we may have a chance to stop it. Now, Baron, my boy, he continued, dropping into a more jovial tone and leading his friend into the laboratory, you'll have to get busy if you intend to keep us ticking. This equipment is at your disposal. He waved toward a newly installed shortwave radio transmitter. Here are storage batteries, all charged. He opened another door. I have a 5-kilowatt generator installed here. It's operated by a gasoline engine. If you need other equipment, you can raid the Rotherfeld plant. You doing great there, Wesley West? Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, our main stream is over here on Mixer, just in case you are not aware. But yeah, I restream out to YouTube to archive some of these from time to time. Yeah. Returning to the main laboratory, he indicated the work table set close to a great double window overlooking Central Park. I couldn't ask for anything better, could you? He smiled. Plenty of light and air and a view of the city. Look, you can even see those poor devils lying around the subway kiosk. His face became bleak. Then he shrugged and tried to throw off his depression. June and I will help you as much as we can. We can raid stores for provisions and hashish. Now let's have breakfast. Oh yeah, so in a strange bit of writing, hashish is the secret ingredient which keeps everyone moving at a super fast speed while the entire world is slowing down into entropy. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, well, I hope you enjoy it there, Wesley West. The next few days were filled with unending labor for the temporal castaways. From daybreak until far into the night, with radio receivers clamped over their ears, the three twisted dials, adjusted rheostats, and listened in on long and short wave bands. but the ether, which once had pulsated with music and friendly voices, was now silent, except for static. "Makes me think of Sunday mornings when I was a boy," Manthus once commented. "Only this is more quiet. It gives me the jitters." There was a note of hysteria in his voice. When the doctor's nerves began to quiver in that manner, Baron always insisted that they all rest. During such recesses they ate, played cards, and helped June with the housework. The younger man was continually amazed by the calmness with which the girl faced their desperate situation. Clad in a blue smock which brought out the color of her eyes, she flitted about the apartment, manufacturing delicious meals out of canned goods and always having a cheery word when the others became discouraged. Yet she never would look out the window. "I can't bear to see those poor souls lying about like rag dolls," she explained. "The only thing that keeps me sane is the hope that we may reawaken them." It was on the evening of the third day that Baron lifted the headset from his burning ears and admitted failure. "We've explored everything but the super shortwaves," he sighed. "I'll have to get equipment from the laboratories before we start on those." June nodded from where she perched on a high stool across the table, but Manthus did not hear. He was making delicate adjustments on his receiving set and listening with rapt attention. "I've got something," he cried. "Jack, June, plug in on my panel. Someone is talking. It's very loud. Must be close." Instantly the others did as he ordered, but were able to catch only the last inflections of a ringing voice. Then silence settled once more. "Oh, what did he say?" the youngsters cried in one breath. "Couldn't understand. Some foreign language." The chemist was furious with disappointment. "But I'd recognize that voice among 1,000. We must get in touch with him. Perhaps he can help us. God knows we need assistance. Quick, Jack, you're an expert. See if you can pick up a reply." Baron leaned over his instruments, heart thumping. The dreadful loneliness against which he had been fighting was broken. Others were alive. Minutes passed, and the evening light died away. They were too excited to strike a light. Shadows crept out of the corners and surrounded them. At last a faint voice grew in their ears, but again the words were unintelligible. "It sounds a little like Greek," puzzled the girl, "but it isn't." Baron adjusted the direction finder and made scribbled calculations. Coming from the southeast and far away," he breathed. "I caught a word then," gasped the doctor. "Ganja, it was." What does that tell us?" snapped Jack, his nerves jumping. "Ganja is the Hindu word for hashish, that's all. My lord, man, don't you understand? The station is in India. Those who operate it are using Andrev's solution, as we are. Oh, listen," shouted Jack. This is bizarre. This was written back in 1933 as well, like right when Reefer Madness is just like kicking off. There was a grinding and clashing. Yeah, nice. Who's doing that? Tillable cat. There we go. Very good. All right. There was a grinding and clashing in the receivers. Then a new voice, harsh and strained with excitement, almost burst their eardrums. "Beware, beware," it screamed. "Do not trust him. He's a devil and has put the world asleep. His mind is rotten with hashish. He is a demon from—" Then came a dull, crunching sound. The voice screamed and died away. In the darkened laboratory, the faces of the three listeners stood out like ovals of white cardboard. "What do you make of that?" stammered Baron at last. "It looks as if the only persons alive, in New York at least, are hashish addicts, the most debased and murderous of drug fiends." The doctor stopped, his eyes dilating with horror. June crept close to him and threw an arm around his shaking shoulders. Can't you see? Their time sense expanded too. Like us, they were unaffected, but unlike us, they use the pure drug. Hashish smokers are without exception homicidal maniacs, vicious criminals. God. Are they responsible for the end of time? Queried Jack. I don't know. Perhaps some mastermind among them is back of it. Some engineering wizard who has succumbed to the drug so recently, or who has such a strong constitution that his intelligence has not been destroyed. The little doctor dragged off his headset, disarranging his sparse grey hair. His face was tired and worn, but his jaw thrust forward pugnaciously. We're making headway, he cried. We know the probable author of the catastrophe is a drug addict and that he is located nearby. We know he has no scruples, for the man who warned us undoubtedly was killed. And I'm convinced these extremely shortwave bands hold the secret. Let's knock off for the day. We look like ghosts. Tomorrow morning, you and June get what equipment you need from across the river. I'll stay here on guard. You'd better raid a drugstore and get some more of our lifesaver, too. It's listed under cannabis indica. This is crazy. This is just... boy, oh boy. I think there's more fiction than science in this piece of science fiction. Pugnaciously, like the dog. Eager or quick to argue, quarrel, or fight. Yeah, like you're looking for a fight. Very good. Ham, radio, and ganja. Shadowtronics, oh boy, that'd be a deadly combination. You have within your hands the power to destroy the universe. Ganja is marijuana, Chris Alberti. Marijuana. It's just so crazy because our Sunday night movie last week, well, it actually literally was Reefer Madness, which is just like it's just crazy. And here we are. That's like the big plot point of this book, written around about the same time. Back when the big propaganda stuff had started up against it there. Prohibition, alcohol prohibition, had just ended. Whole bunch of government law enforcement officers about to be put out of a job. Got to demonize something. Put those people to work. Alrighty. Book title? Yeah, okay, right. Okay, let me just take a second to fix this up. It's up there, Blue Justice TV. What's going on? Just fixing the book title here, and then we're going to pop back into it. This is such a... I mean, it's not a... boy, I don't know. Reefer Madness in my 1930s short story. More likely than you think. All right. Here we go. Let's, okay, one sec. So this is not Annabelle Lee. This is The End of Time. The End of Time by Wallace West. There we go. Now we got it fixed up. Okay. 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 Tomorrow, you and June get what equipment you need from across the river. I'll stay here on guard. You'd better raid a drugstore and get some more of our lifesaver too. It's listed under cannabis indica. The next morning dawned clear and cold. It was early October, and there was a chill in the apartment. Barron swung his legs over the edge of the davenport in the living room and stared out at the frost-covered trees of Central Park. The leaves were falling before the brisk wind, and forming little eddying mounds over the forms of those lying about the streets. Jack shivered at the thought of the millions and millions of victims of the disaster who littered the earth. They seemed to accuse him of still being alive. Well, if Manthis was right, perhaps all could be revived before winter set in. June was singing as he and the doctor came to breakfast. Apparently she wished to forget the events of the previous night, so they laughed and joked as though they intended to go on a picnic rather than across a dead city. The hotel lobby was as they last had seen it when they descended. The bellboys still nodded on their benches. A traveling salesman was hunched over a week-old Times as if he would awake in a few minutes, glance about guiltily, and resume his reading. The child they had rescued still lay on the divan. Her golden hair framed her cheeks like a halo. One arm was thrown above her head. She seemed ready to wake, though she had not breathed for days. "It all makes me feel so lonely," whispered June, clinging to the engineer's arm. "I want to cry, or whistle to keep up my courage." "Don't worry," Jack replied softly, patting her hand and speaking with more assurance than he felt. "We'll find a way out." She squeezed his arm and smiled at him with new courage. For months, in fact, ever since his first visit to the Manthis apartment, Baron had admired the doctor's charming daughter. Although nothing had been said of love between them, they often had gone to a dance or the theatre together, while a firm friendship had been cemented. Now their closer association and the unflinching bravery which she showed was ripening this into a stronger bond. They went out into the crisp morning, stepped across the body of a street sweeper who lay in the gutter, and entered the doctor's automobile. Through the silent city they drove, Baron watching carefully to avoid striking stalled cars or grotesquely sprawling bodies. There was a tangle of wrecked automobiles in the center of the Queensborough Bridge, and they were forced to push them apart to get through. While they were engaged in this arduous work, a drifting ferry bumped into a pier, shaking the dreaming captain into a semblance of life at the wheel. "I used to like fairy tales," moaned June. "They're dreadful, really." She clung to him like a frightened child. He drew her close and kissed her. "I love you, June," he whispered, as though fearful that the sleeping drivers of the tangled cars might overhear. "Don't be afraid." "I'm not, now," she smiled through eyes filled with tears. "I've loved you for months, Jack. Whatever happens, we have each other." He helped her back into the car and drove on in silence. At last the Rotherfell plant gloomed before them, forbidding as an Egyptian tomb. With a feeling that he was entering some forbidden precinct, Jack led the way to his office. Somehow, without its usual bustle and bright lights, it seemed alien. Once inside, he forgot his hesitation and set about collecting equipment, queerly shaped neon tubes, reflectors, coils, electrodes. Soon there was a pile of material glinting on top of his desk. They were exploring a deep cabinet with the aid of a flashlight when a strange clicking sound made them whirl simultaneously. In a corner of the room, a deeper blot of shadow caught their eyes. Jack snapped on the flash. In the small circle of light, a long, cadaverous face appeared. Thin lips were drawn back over wide-spaced yellow teeth. Black eyes stared unwinkingly into the light. The flash wavered as the engineer tried to get his nerves under control. "Oh, it's nothing," he assured the trembling girl. "A night watchman caught as he was making his rounds, probably. Don't get excited." He wet his lips. "He's alive!" screamed June. "The eyelids, they moved!" Okay, all right. Boy, oh boy. We should do dad jokes next Sunday. Oh, that's right, it's Father's Day next Sunday, isn't it? Yeah, we'll probably have some father-related material to read next Sunday. I don't know if I can do 2.5 hours of dad jokes, though. Very good. Am I missing anything in chat? Love overcomes all, says Blue Justice TV. I think it does. I think it does. Wallace West is getting into the weeds. Yeah. Who knew that cannabis indica would be the substance to save the universe? Unreal. All right. Yes, I'm alive, boomed a hoarse voice. I thought I was the only man God had spared. Pardon me for frightening you. I was so thunderstruck. The stranger stepped forward. He was dressed in a long black topcoat, high collar and string tie. The clicking noise was explained when he rubbed his long white hands together, making the knuckles pop like tiny firecrackers. Ivan Solinsky at your service. He smiled with what evidently was intended to be warmth, again showing those rows of teeth like picket fences. I suppose we're all here on the same mission? To find a solution for the mystery of the world's paralysis. The apparition lit a long and bloated cigarette, and through the acrid smoke surveyed them quizzically. I'm Jack Barron, formerly on the staff here, and this is June Manthis, daughter of Dr. Frank Manthis, head of the Chemical Research Department. The engineer winced as Solinsky enfolded his hand in a clammy grip. Ah, yes, I know the doctor by hearsay. A great scientist. He has a lovely daughter. Bowing deeply to June as he let his beady eyes wander over her face and figure. Perhaps we can join forces. Although I must admit I have abandoned hope. It's God's will. He rolled his eyes toward heaven, then riveted them once more upon June. Why, certainly. Jack was striving to overcome his growing dislike. We'll be driving back in a few minutes. Would you care to come with us? No. The pupil-less eyes skittered toward Barron for a moment. I know the doctor's address. I'll come visit you soon. Now, I must be going. Solinsky turned as if to depart, then strode to the desk and looked down at the mass of equipment. Ah, super short-wave tubes, I see. Very clever. His dexterous fingers lingered over them a moment. Then he bowed and was gone. The two remained staring at the empty doorway. I wish he had been dead, sleeping, whispered June at last, twisting her handkerchief with trembling fingers. I didn't like the way he kept looking at me. Well, he seemed all right to me. Jack tried to forget his own prejudice. He's willing to help us. Might he not be one of the hashish addicts? Those eyes, the pupils were mere pinpoints, and those evil-smelling cigarettes. Then why should he have offered to help? Puzzled Jack. He could have killed us. Nevertheless, I hope we've seen the last of him. Are you about through? Let's get out of this awful place. He looked like a mummy. They drove back to the apartment, so completely preoccupied that both forgot to obtain the drug which the doctor had requested. Yes, I've heard of him, Manthis said after he had been informed of the encounter. A naturalized Russian, used to do quite a bit of valuable work in various fields of physics, but he was some sort of radical. Seems to me an old-fashioned anarchist, and not popular. He dropped out of sight several years ago. I presumed he was dead. They soon had the new equipment installed and again began exploring the wave bands, beginning with the comparatively lengthy ones and working down into those only slightly longer than light. It was tedious work, but all were, by now, as adept as Jack in combing the ether, and their task progressed rapidly. Despite the labor, however, nothing could be heard. There was only the universal, breathless silence. At times they moved to the commercial bands and tried to pick up the stations they had heard on the previous day, but even there they met with failure. What? Let's blow this joint. Let's blow this popsicle stand. Everyone's backing away slowly. I'm just going to make a little adjustment. Where's the chat window? Chat window right there. Oh, that's not working? That's the restream chat window. That didn't work for some reason. This is the oh, can someone type something in chat real fast, please? There are two windows going. There are two windows. So which one's which? One second. This one is the pixel chat window. Yeah, I'm just going to blah, blah, blah. How can I pixel chat window? Height 800. All right. I was going to see if that works any better. All right. Yeah, so yeah, that should... Well, you know, I don't know if that's going to pick up the restream stuff, though. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go. All right. Anyway, there we go. We're going to... okay, we'll just continue with that. Blah, blah, blah. By the evening of the third day, they had left the wave bands, which could be measured in meters, and were exploring those strange and almost wholly uncharted depths of the ether, which must be calculated in centimeters. There, at last, luck favored them. It was Jack who caught a strange pulsating tone on the 3-centimeter band. It rose and fell, then died away like the keening of a lost soul. Listen, he whispered. Plug in here. I found something. June and the doctor followed his instructions. Delicately fingering the coils, Baron picked up the sound again, only to lose it. Then it came back once more. This time he followed it as it had changed to the 5-centimeter band. Back and forth it went as though weaving an intricate and devilish web. What do you make of it? Queried the doctor at last. Don't know. Jack bit his lips. It's no natural phenomenon, I'll swear. Somebody is manipulating a broadcasting station of terrific power not far from here, and playing with that wave as a helmsman brings a sailing ship into the wind and lets her pay off again. What do we do now? The little chemist, finding his theory apparently confirmed, was at a loss. Could we wreck that station? Oh, fat chance. The engineer laughed bitterly as he reached for a cigarette. Whoever has conceived that bit of hellishness is well guarded. The three of us wouldn't have a ghost of a show. What I can't understand is... No use talking about theories now. Manthus sat down, crushed. Dropping his head into his hands, he pulled his few hairs as though that might drag out an idea. What's to be done? Do you realize that we hold more responsibility than ever man has held before? Caesar, Napoleon, they were pikers. We have to save a world. Silence greeted his outburst. The scratching of a match as June lit a cigarette sounded like an explosion. Then the smoke eddied undisturbed while the three stared vacantly into space, trying to think. Couldn't we... The girl swallowed hesitantly as she realized her ignorance of radio engineering. Couldn't we interfere with that wave? Interfere with the wave which already is breaking up the thought waves? What? La Giazone. La Giazone. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, La Giazone. I like that. Thank you, sir, for that channel sub. Very cool. Oh, that reminds me, yeah. We're continuing with more of The Wolf Among Us a bit later tonight, the Elegia Zone. I know you look forward to that. Yeah. Very cool. Thank you for the channel sub. Blah, 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 blah. Couldn't we interfere with that wave? Interfere with the wave which already is breaking up the thought waves. Cancel its power. Oh, Jack, you must know what I mean. With this dinky 5-kilowatt station, we couldn't reach Yonkers against the power they've got. Oh, by Jove! He leaped to his feet as a new thought struck him. Maybe we could just wake up New York. Get help from the police then. Smash that other station afterwards. But we don't know whether interference would break the spell, interposed the practical doctor. And it will take a lot of practice to follow that wave. It jumps back and forth like a grasshopper. And if we don't do it right the first time, whoever's operating that station will be down on us like a ton of bricks, admitted Jack. Let's get the child we saved, suggested June. We can bring her up here. Then we'll only need a little power, just enough to be effective in this room to bring her to life if we can. They wouldn't hear our wave. Oh, great. Jack bent over and kissed her. You're a real help. I'll be back in a minute. He dashed out. Soon they heard his step on the stairs, and he reappeared, tenderly bearing his golden-haired burden. Now, June, he commanded briskly, place her in a comfortable position on the work table while I get ready. He began arranging equipment and connecting it with the bank of storage batteries. Shall I adjust a headset for her? Asked the impatient doctor. Be yourself. Jack placed a crooked vacuum tube near the child's head and clamped 2 flat electrodes on her temples. This wave must act directly on the brain. The sense of hearing has nothing to do with it. All right, Sleeping Beauty. He stretched the kinks out of his aching back. Oh, little Lady Death, sneaking on in. How you doing? It's good to see Lady Death. Very nice. He stretched the kinks out of his aching back. Let's see what we can do for you. Pardon me, Doctor, if I seemed rude. This is ticklish work. Pick up the outside wave for me. Thanks. Now I've got our dinky sending station set on the same wavelength at a different frequency. It's adjusted so that as I keep in touch through this tuning coil, our wave will fluctuate over the same path as the other. It should take 6 or 8 hours to overcome the effect on her, I judge. Here we go. June, you'd better get yourself and your dad some food. Doctor, you examine the kid from time to time. In an hour or so, June can relieve me. He pressed a switch. The tubes filled with a green glow. You nearly forgot about... forgot about Short Story Sunday. Well, we still got a ways to go. We're only halfway through our story here. So basically, the entire world has been put into like a cataleptic trance. Basically, like there's a mass hypnosis by this weird radio station, and the only people who are unaffected are homicidal, dope-smoking, marijuana users. It's good. It's been a pretty good story so far. It's been weird. Boy, so how you been keeping, Lady Death? Oh, I saw your hubby was streaming the other night. Yeah. Very good. Wow, that catbot got the clip created message. Oh, probably because it's posted a link. That's why. Okay, let's restore that. You can't see what people say on the Xbox chat if they use faces. Oh, you mean smileys? I did not know that. Wow. Huh. That's good to know. All right. All right. That's something for me to jump up and down a mixer about. If smileys don't work on the Xbox thing, that's terrible. Alrighty. Yeah. Get that feedback into Mixer. Get them cracking on fixing that stuff. All right. Let's get back to our thing. Ooh, lordy. Very good. In the meantime, it's good to see you. Very good to see you. Baron pressed a switch. The tubes filled with a green glow. 2 hours passed, and the sun was sinking behind the trees of the park in a bloody haze when Jack at last signaled for June to handle the dials. For a time he guided her slim fingers. Then, as she caught the trick, he rose and stretched his cramped muscles. Don't lose the wave for a moment, or we'll have to start all over again, he warned. Now for dinner. She nodded and, frowning slightly, bent over the dials. At that moment there came a heavy knock on the apartment door. "Who's that?" gasped Manthus, his face turning grey. "Probably Selinsky," replied Jack, feeling his spine crawl as he remembered the mouldy Russian. Fine time he chose for a visit. "Shall I let him in?" "Don't see what else there is to do." "Good evening," cried their guest as Manthus opened the door. "Ah, Dr. Manthus, I believe. I've heard so much about your work." His hoarse yet ringing voice made the little man start violently and caused June to shake her head in annoyance as the sound interfered with the humming of the vagrant wave. "Sorry I couldn't have come earlier." Selinsky advanced into the laboratory, giving the effect of driving the chemist before him. "Trying to revive one of the sufferers, I see. May God aid you in this noble work." He spread the tails of his long coat and sat down. As he talked, his eyes flashed about the room, taking in every detail and at last fastening on June's fresh beauty like those of a vampire. "Not," he boomed as he lighted a cigarette, "not that I believe it possible." Catching an agonized glance from Jane, Jack interrupted. "You'll have to speak softly, sir. This is ticklish work." "I beg your pardon?" The Russian lowered his voice so that it squeaked piercingly like a rusty hinge. He wrung his hands audibly. "Perhaps we'd better move into the living room," suggested the doctor, hovering in the background. "There we can talk without interrupting." Their guest unfolded joint by joint like a collapsible rule. "Of course, if you think I'm spying," he grated. "Oh, not at all," protested Jack, although he longed to strike the brute across the face. "It's just that voices of certain pitches interfere. Surely you've seen radio operators go all to pieces when spoken to." Ungraciously, Selinsky allowed himself to be ushered into the outer room. Once there, he disposed his lean form on another chair, unctuously refused a highball, and, forgetting his momentary anger, soon was deep in a scientific discussion of the problems involved in revivifying the world. "What's up there, Smell Frog? What's going on, man?" "Yeah, hope you're having a great day, man. Good to see you again." "What's up there, Red Space Knight?" "Red Space Knight." "Catbot don't like you, man." "With good reason." He mentioned the nearby radio station, but declared that he had been unable to locate it despite a careful search. Dismissing this, he turned to other topics, displaying a vast knowledge of all departments of scientific achievement, and despite his depressing personality, holding his bearers' attention so closely they forgot the passage of time until the clock struck 10. "Time for daily injection," said the doctor. "Do you use Andrev solution too, sir?" "Naturally," replied the other, lighting one cigarette from the butt of another. Manthus hurried into the laboratory. A few moments later, he reappeared in the doorway and called to Jack in an agitated voice. As the younger man joined him, he closed the door and turned a white face to him. "The drug is almost gone," Manthus said. "Didn't you obtain a new supply?" "Oh, boy. There are no highball fiends. There ought to be." "Good morning, Macabre Gnome. We're doing good. We're doing good. Hey, then, Pew's here. Pew, pew, pew. How you doing? Thank you for the host. Thank you." Yeah, we're halfway through it. Okay, and just a quick little recap for those who just joined us. The entire world has been put into like a big like trance, like a cataleptic sleep, and the only people who have been unaffected are marijuana users. This is written in 1933. And so the only people who are unaffected by this are marijuana smokers. But as everyone knows, if you smoke marijuana, you are 100% guaranteed at some point to turn into a homicidal maniac, and that's the big concern. So that they're trying. How do we help people here without turning into homicidal maniacs. Or the only people they're going to encounter are just going to like be looking to kill, boy. It's a bizarre story. And that's what's really funny, because last week we were watching the Sunday night movie was Reefer Madness, and this here is just like crazy. It's crazy. All right. Boy, okay, let's get on with our stream here. Let's get on with it. Okay, so these scientists have managed to develop marijuana which doesn't have any like a high effect, but so they're okay. They're okay. The drug is almost gone, Manthus said. Didn't you obtain a new supply? I forgot it, admitted Jack, feeling his own face grow pale. The shock of running across Solinsky at the laboratory upset me. Well, that's all right then. It gave me a turn, but we have plenty of time. The doctor laughed shakily. Run down to the nearest drugstore. There should be a supply there. Better take a flashlight. He pushed open the door, then shrank back. Leaning against the jamb was the Russian. His manner had changed subtly. His thin lips spread from ear to ear in a wolfish grin. His fingers clicked like castanets. Ah, he purred. So you have used up the last of your solution. What's that to you? The doctor was gripped by cold, unreasoning fear. Only that you'll be unable to obtain more. Since my first meeting with your daughter, I've had my men collect all the cannabis indica in the city. Your men? Manthus was thunderstruck. Certainly, you old fool. Do you think I'm a bungling theorist like yourself? Who do you think is operating that shortwave station? I am. Who do you think put the world to sleep? I did. Who do you think will wake it? I will. Solinsky's figure appeared to expand. He took deep draughts from his cigarette. The smoke seemed to impel some terrific force into his gaunt frame. So it was your voice I heard, cried Manthus bitterly, and those awful tales about you were true. A hashish smoker. A person whose mind is rotting, in control of the world. He seemed about to leap at the other, and his chubby figure, and that attitude would have seemed ludicrous if it had not been tragic. It shall not be, he shouted. Now, see here, Doctor. Solinsky assumed a friendly tone. You're making a grave mistake. I've something to offer better than you've ever dreamed of. What do you mean? Just this. How would you like to be assistant to the king of the world? Crazy already, sneered the doctor, squinting up at his tormentor. Crazy or not, when the world awakes, I will be its king. Why, damn you, I thought you were an anarchist and wanted to do away with kings and governments, sputtered the little man. Solinsky burst into a gale of fiendish laughter. An anarchist is merely a capitalist without money or power, he quoted. What do you want of us? Demanded Manthus, playing for time. Very simple. This. I intend soon to begin awakening those who will serve me, first in New York and then throughout the world. When I have a skeleton government built up, I will withdraw the wave and allow the people to revive. Clever, isn't it? Especially for such a madman as you think me. He snapped his fingers and leered cunningly at them. The doctor choked, but Jack's hand on his arm steadied him. You have a very beautiful daughter, resumed their diabolical visitant. Leave my daughter out of this, cried Manthus, recoiling. Not at all. Her charm and ability have greatly impressed me, so impressed me that I've decided to make her my queen. You scum of the gutter, you filthy beast! I'd die before I'd be a party to such a thing. The doctor was beside himself. I consider myself justified, replied the other, taking great delight in baiting his foe. The world was never able to govern itself. We anarchists have bided our time, although overshadowed by communists, fascists, and such ridiculous experimenters. Now comes our turn. I shall be the Viceroy of God. Under my rule and that of Queen June, the world shall become a second heaven." He rolled his eyes upwards at those words, and as he did so, Jack, who had been awaiting just such an opportunity, struck him on the jaw. Oh, man. So this is escalating really fast now. Okay. Smell says, when do I start to play games? It's Sunday. Sunday's a bit of a weird day. We have a short story Sunday, which it'll be going for about another 45 minutes or so. Then I take a break. 6 p.m. Pacific, I come back. We have movie night. Tonight's movie is Suddenly with Frank Sinatra. Following that, we'll be doing another episode of The Wolf Among Us, and then after that, back into the gaming. Yeah. So yeah, Sunday's a weird day. Okay, let's continue. Let us continue. The blow would have felled an ox, but Zelinsky merely staggered back a step and snarled. Before Baron could renew the attack, he jerked an automatic from beneath his coat and leaped to the hall door. "You I shall kill," he grinned evilly, "but not now. First you must taste the horror of sinking into the long sleep. You have no more drug, nor can you obtain any. Those pitiful storage batteries will be exhausted by the time you have aroused the child, so you must sleep until you have the courage to kill yourself. Unless you have the courage to kill yourself. Doctor, I deeply regret that this has occurred, but you see that I must let you and June sleep too. When I have need of you, I will recall you. That's all. Farewell. May God pity you, Baron. I will not." He sprang through the door, and the tails of his black coat, flapping like the wings of a gigantic bat, vanished down the stairs. Manthus slammed the door and locked it, then leaned weakly against the panels and wiped his round face. His hands shook pitifully. "This is then the end," he whispered hoarsely. "Is there none of the drug left?" Jack shook him out of his lethargy. "Enough for a half portion for all of us," sighed the doctor. "But what use is that? Better we poisoned ourselves now and escaped that demon." "Nonsense. A half portion means 12 hours of life. In that time, I can rig up the big transmitter. Perhaps there's still time to revive New York. Zelinsky won't know we have a generator until we turn on the power. Quick, poor June must be nearly frightened to death at our shouting." But they found the girl sitting tense and jubilant at the controls. "Father, Jack," she cried as the door opened. "It's working. I saw her move. That means we may be able to revive the world." Her face was streaked with tears. Her heart's beating," whispered the doctor, feeling the child's pulse. "Slow but steady. She'll regain consciousness any moment now." "No time to wait." Disregarding June's cry of protest, Jack stripped off the electrodes. "We must get the big machine working." "But the little thing will die again," cried June, throwing herself on her knees beside the cot. "I didn't think you could be so cruel." Zelinsky has cut off our drug supply," explained Manthus gently. "He's operating the other station. Don't blame Jack. We must work fast." "Oh, you mean that Russian is responsible for all of this?" "Yes, child, but maybe we can defeat him yet. Don't lose courage. I must go and prepare what's left of the drug. We're overdue for it now." Meanwhile, Jack was busy running leads from the generator room, connecting banks of tubes, stringing an aerial on the terrace. 12 hours, he muttered. "Just time to make it if the doctor's calculations are correct. June, hand me those pliers. But be careful of the wires. I haven't had time to insulate them. When we start the dynamo, they'll be carrying 12,000 volts. "But won't Zelinsky and his men come and kill us?" For the first time, the full weight of despair descended upon her brave spirit. "Probably. Does your father have a revolver?" I think so." "Find out." Jack connected a loading coil with deft fingers. "Then go down to a sporting goods store and get some ammunition. If there are any shotguns in the place, bring 2 back with plenty of buckshot shells. I don't think we're being watched yet, but if you're attacked, run for it." Noting she looked hurt at his abruptness, he kissed her quietly. "Sorry, darling. Every second counts. Run along, like a good girl." She smiled for the first time in a long while, and patted his hand. When she returned, 2 shotguns and several boxes of shells held like wood in her bent arms, the generator was sparkling merrily. The gasoline engine barked steadily, and the vacuum tubes glowed green. Manthis came in at that moment and injected all the remaining drug as Jack gave crisp orders. Automatically, the engineer had taken command. "I'll get things going and handle the dials until Selinsky sends his rats down on us. June, you must watch the street door. Run up at the first sign of an attack. After that, you'll take my place and hold it, no matter what happens, until we succeed or are killed." Oh no, this is Jack. My bad. Wrong person. "I'll get things going and handle the dials until Selinsky sends his rats down on us. June, you watch the street door. Run up at the first sign of an attack. After that, you'll take my place and hold it, no matter what happens, until we succeed or are killed. The doctor and I will go downstairs when you come up and hold them off or retreat slowly. Thank heaven we can command both the front and rear stairways from the halls. Now, Doctor, watch the circuit breaker. I'm going to throw on full power." As he advanced the rheostat, the tubes glowed brighter, bathing the room in unearthly light. Jack adjusted his headset and smiled up at June. She kissed him bravely before hurrying to her dangerous post. Once more he sat listening to that whining, fluctuating wave. The engineer's thoughts wavered between speculations on the future, fond memories of June, and impatience with the dragging hours. Would nothing ever happen? Through the earphones now came a jangling, agonized whine, as if the 2 antagonistic waves were endowed with life and actually struggling in the ether. From time to time his glance wandered to the child, who, having obtained a head start through her preliminary treatment, now was stirring fretfully. Slowly the time plodded by. Jack smoked cigarette after cigarette in an effort to fight off the drowsiness which loaded his eyelids with lead. It must have been... it's Uther. Oh, there's Walter Walker. It must have been 3 o'clock when a whimper from the divan apprised them that the child had at last awakened. "Where's Mama?" She blinked into the glare. "I've lost my Mama." There, honey," smoothed the doctor, stopping his pacing up and down the room and picking her up. "Your Mama had to go away for a while. She'll be back any minute. Let's go find a drink of water. And I've something for you to play with, too." Gently he carried her into June's bedroom. Soon he reappeared and patted Jack on the shoulder. "Our first victory," he said in a broken voice. "She's in perfect condition and sleeping naturally now. I gave her one of June's old dolls to play with." He sighed and collapsed into the nearest chair. "I'm almost dead with the strain of it. Do you think there's a chance?" 3 more hours should turn the trick. I don't understand why Selinsky... The crash of a shotgun, coming faint but clear from the street below, brought him up short. The shot was answered by a volley of rifle fire. Jack almost lost the wave in his excitement, but regained it with a desperate twist of the wrist. No time for nerves now. He must be calm. Go down and hold them until June can get back to relieve me," he ordered. "Hurry, they may rush her at any moment." The doctor seemed 10 years younger as he thrust a revolver into his pocket, snatched a shotgun from behind the door, and ran out. Oh, yeah, let's restore that. Okay. Go again. The doctor seemed 10 years younger as he... Yeah, that catbot is a little tough at times. The doctor seemed 10 years younger as he thrust a revolver into his pocket, snatched a shotgun from behind the door, and ran out. The commotion had awakened the child, who started whimpering, adding further to Jack's distractions. Yet he managed, in spite of ghastly mental pictures of June being torn to pieces by her attackers, to keep his hands steady. A few minutes later she slipped into the room and laid her cold cheek against his before taking her place at the instruments. "It's all right," she added. "I don't think they'll attack in the dark. There are 5 of them. I'm sure I wounded or killed one. They weren't expecting a guard. I left the gun with Father. He's behind the cashier's desk." Then, all her courage evaporating, she turned an appealing little girl face toward her lover. "Don't let yourself be killed, Jack. I'd die too." "June, you're wonderful," he whispered. "I didn't know there was a girl alive as brave as you. Goodbye. No matter what happens, keep the wave in tune." He kissed her tenderly, trying not to think he had done so for the last time, and hurried out. The stairs were black as the inside of a tomb. Once he stumbled over the body of a charwoman and came near falling headlong. "Nothing's happened since that first volley," whispered Manthus when Jack slipped into the cage. "They're holding off for dawn. Look." His voice wavered. "Was that a face at the window?" He fired wildly. Glass tinkled. "Easy," warned Baron. "Don't waste ammunition. Besides, if you get this place full of smoke, they'll jump us." Dawn was painting the windows gray when the assault began. Their first warning came when a small object was tossed into the lobby. It exploded in a cloud of white vapor. "A tear gas!" yelled Jack. "Back to the stairs!" They ran for cover, weeping and choking. Then began a slow retreat up the stairways, Jack guarding the front and Manthus the back passages. At first it was a simple matter for their enemies to toss tear bombs through the fire doors, then, protected by respirators, capture another floor, but as the light increased, this became more and more hazardous. Twice a spray of buckshot laid a Selinsky man low. "He hasn't many men available," called Jack as the attack slackened. "But watch out, his time's about up. Hey, look at that woman!" A white-uniformed maid, whom he remembered having seen lying in the same spot every time he climbed the stairs, had stirred weakly, as though about to wake. It was their glance at the sleeping form which undid them. When they looked up, both fire doors were open, and helmeted figures were emerging from them. The shotguns roared. 2 of their attackers collapsed, but the others came on. Before there was time for another shot, they were at close quarters. Standing back to back, Manthus and Jack clubbed their guns and held their ground. The fact that Selinsky and his men wore respirators handicapped them immensely, so that the 2 defenders kept a cleared circle about them. One of the attackers, more daring than the rest, leaped forward to engage the engineer. He collapsed with a crushed skull. Then, when victory seemed in their grasp, luck turned. At Jack's next blow, the stock of his weapon parted from the barrel, leaving him almost defenseless. At the same time, Manthus slipped and collapsed from a knife thrust. Jack was left alone to face 3 enemies and would have been killed within the minute, had not Selinsky, recalling the little time he had left to stop the interfering wave, deserted his comrades and sprinted for the laboratory. The seeming defection of their chief threw the other 2 attackers into momentary confusion. Before they could recover, Jack knocked one out with the gun barrel, then came a flying tackle at the other. But he had caught a Tartar. His remaining enemy was a gigantic Negro. Recovering from his surprise, the latter lifted high a glittering knife to finish his disarmed foe. Jack snatched at the uplifted arm, missed. A revolver cracked. The hooded man staggered, then crashed forward. "Remembered my pistol just in time," gasped the doctor from the floor. "Don't bother about me, I'm all right. Stop Selinsky, for God's sake." Although his lungs seemed bursting, Baron turned and flew up the stairs. Being familiar with every turn, he gained on the Russian and caught sight of the dreadful black coat-tails as his enemy burst through to the 20th floor. The locked door of the apartment baffled him only a moment. Stepping back, Selinsky hurled his giant frame against the panels. They splintered and crashed inward, but the delay allowed Jack to catch up. He leaped on the Russian's back. Locked together, they reeled into the living room. For a fleeting moment, Jack saw June sitting rigidly at the instruments. Her eyes were starting from their sockets, but her hands were steady. "I warned you to kill yourself." Selinsky's voice rose in a screaming whisper through the respirator. "Now I will do it." Displaying the strength of madness, he hurled Jack from him. Losing all control of his limbs, the younger man flew across the room and demolished the divan in his fall. But the thought of what Selinsky would do to June brought him back to the attack. "Good morning, Malfunction. Hey, man. What's going on?" The fury of their struggle wrecked the living room. Both bled from numerous wounds. One of the Russian's bleak eyes closed under a well-directed blow, but otherwise he seemed unaffected. Jack grappled again and realized his mistake as he was caught in a bone-cracking grip and forced into the laboratory. Baron felt a rib snap. A sweat of agony broke out over his body. Holding his enemy helpless, the invader worked his way toward the work table. They bumped against it, making the equipment totter perilously. Selinsky released his grip, snatched a bottle of distilled water, and swung. Jack felt his head explode. The room went dark, but in his semi-consciousness he remembered he must not let the Russian reach that switch. As he slid slowly to the floor, he grasped the other's legs. The drug fiend tried to kick free, stumbled, struck the table with his hips. Throwing out his arms to regain his balance, he plunged one hand among the naked cables which led from the generator to the transformers and tubes. A blinding flash of light and the scream of a soul in torment followed. As a nauseating odor of burning flesh filled the room, the Russian was hurled backward like a rubber ball. He struck the window which overlooked the park, crashed through the large panel, and fell. June sat as though hypnotized, forcing herself to manipulate those dials. Jack crawled to the window and watched the black body swoop downward like a wounded bird, the coat flapping like crippled wings. After what seemed an eon, it struck the edge of the subway kiosk, bounced like a rag doll, and sprawled across the pavement. Still, Jack did not move. Through a haze of his own blood he stared, the fate of his enemy forgotten. All about the kiosk, bodies which had lain so still for the past week were moving. The little figures, not much larger than ants from that height, yawned, sat up, and stretched as though it was the commonest thing in the world to take a nap in the midst of Fifth Avenue. It was as if the last swoop of that bat-like figure had returned them to consciousness. "The world is alive! The world is alive!" Baron croaked wildly as he felt his senses slipping from him. "We've won, June! We've won!" Oh, that's it? Oh, we only got as far as 80%. Okay, all right. And then the rest is, okay, that's all the... Yeah, I don't think they do that so much anymore. Boy, oh boy, that's a lot. Okay. I thought we had a lot more to go. All right. We've won, June. Okay, that was a very abrupt ending. Okay, so, okay. This book is 80% short story, and the last 20% is just all the legalese and stuff like that from Gutenberg.org. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. And that was, let's get back to the big... Well, let's see. Didn't mean to be moving that. I meant to, let's get back to the beginning. Bloop. There we go. That was the end of time. I tell you what, yeah, it was kind of weird too, because they kind of like dropped the whole Reefer Madness thing right at the very end, and yeah, about halfway into the book, they just like never really talk about it again. But yeah, it was a very weird premise, though, a very weird premise for all of that. Wesley West is still with us over on the YouTubes. Nice, very cool, very cool. Okay, no, I'll look at Discord later. Otherwise I'll just get distracted. Okay, but we've got 20 minutes to go. We got 20 minutes to go, so let's find another short story to read then, I guess. I thought this was gonna take all the way to the top of the hour and then some, but apparently not. What else can we read real fast? What's in here? Let me find it. What is this? That'll be a long one. 1957. How long is this? Oh, this is a long one. Wolf's Bane. Oh yeah, so this is a Frederick Pohl story. This is way long though, way long. Pull that back to the beginning. I don't know. What would be fun to read? Could do that short stories thing. That had a ton of stuff in it. Oh no, not that one. Is it the one? No, that's not the one I want. Where's my library? It wasn't that one. There was that thing of fairy tales I had. There we go. 1,500 fairy tales. Let's take a little peek in that. Actually, I can get caught up with chat in the meantime. Take a little peek at that. What are you talking about eating walrus for? What? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. All right. Looking for. And that looks like it carries on, so let's not do that one. Who's Robert Nisbet Bain? Wow, that's a long short story. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, we're going to do this one. I don't know who this dude is. What was his name again? This is Robert Nisbet Bain. Let me just change our... Robert Nisbet Bain. And the story is called The Vampire and St. Michael. Because sure, why not? It's an odd little odd story. Okay, let's oh, why did that not change? Oh, okay, there we go. The Vampire and St. Michael. I've never read this one before. It's going to be interesting. Nice shirt. Yeah, it's just doing it. Malfunctions, doing some cheap jabs at the Eskimos. All right. All right. Hey, Orcon, how you doing? You got to get to work. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. You have a great day at work, man. Have a great day at work, Orgon. I hope we'll catch you a little later. Tomorrow, by the way, Halo night. Just throwing that out there. I know sometimes you like to get a little Halo in. Yeah. Red Space Night. What's up? How long till movie night? Movie night 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, so basically, yeah, this we're going to be reading short stories, probably for about another 20 minutes. Well, actually, probably just till the end of this one, really. And then I need to take a break. I need to take care of some IRL things around the house here. And then I'll be back at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we'll kick off with movie night, followed by another episode of The Wolf Among Us, followed by just more gaming, yeah. How old am I? I'm old enough to know better than ask people's ages on the internet. That's how old I am. There we go. There we go. And then let's come back on up here. Did I miss anything? Well, Kate missed something. Chris missed something. We're reading chat backwards. Yeah, it's always weird. Okay, all right. What is Muktuk? Oh, I don't know what Muktuk is either. You're all a bunch of strange people. It's a bunch of strange people. That's okay. I like strange. Let's take a little look at our how are we doing in creative. Tell you what, the last 2 weeks is I guess there's some in here right now, but yeah, the last 2 weeks there's been a little drop in the amount of people doing their creative streaming. Need to get on top of that. Keep on top of that. Whale skin and blubber. What? What are you guys talking about? All right. Very good. Okay. Muktuk is whale skin. But what whale skin and blubber? But what is it though? Okay, I'm gonna look it up. Muktuk. I mean, listen. It is. Oh, it's what? It's food. Yikes! All right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sure it is quite delicious if you grew up with it. In the same way that I think Vegemite is one of the most amazing spreads you could ever have to put on your toast. Other people are they have a different idea about what is acceptable to put on their toast. Can't wait for movie night. It's going to be good. It's good with salt. I don't know. You'd try some Vegemite. Most Americans that have tried it there, they say it tastes and smells like axle grease, and looks like it. But it's delicious. It's good stuff. It's I love it. Tonight's movie is Suddenly with Frank Sinatra. It's a film noir there, Chris. All right. Don't know. Well, yeah, that's true. Lady Death says, "Don't knock it till you try it." Yeah, that's right. Could be green eggs and ham. Could be green eggs and ham. That's for sure. Smelling frog. That is not good, my friend. That is not good. We don't go there here. All right. Here we go. The Vampire and Saint Michael. Vampire and Saint Michael. Yeah, well, yeah, Marmite and Vegemite are similar, except Marmite is the, you know, Vegemite is where it's at. Green eggs and ham, Sam I am. Once upon a time in a certain village, there lived two neighbors. One was rich, very rich, and the other so poor that he had nothing in the world but a little hut, and that was tumbling about his ears. At length things came to such a pass with the poor man that he had nothing to eat, and could get work nowhere. Full of grief, he bethought him what he should do. He thought, and at last he said, "Look ye, wife, I'll go to my rich neighbor. Perchance he will lend me a silver rouble. That, at any rate, will be enough to buy bread with." So he went. Good Lord! Why are people on a getting banned spree right now? Typing terrible things like that. Catbot's gonna get you, and then the mod's gonna get you. Man. I don't know. Strange. Perchance he will lend me a silver rouble. That, at any rate, will be enough to buy bread with. So he went. He came to the rich man. "Good health to my lord," cried he. "Good health. I've come on an errand to thee, dear little master." "What might thine errand be?" inquired the rich man. "Alas, would to God that I had no need to say it. It has come to pass with us that there's not a crust of bread nor a farthing of money in the house. So I have come to thee, dear little master. Lend us but a silver rouble, and we shall be ever so thankful to thee, and I'll work myself old to pay it back." "But who will stand surety for thee?" asked the rich man. "I know not if any man will, I'm so poor. Yet perchance God and Saint Michael will be my sureties." and he pointed at the icon in the corner. Then the icon of Saint Michael spoke to the rich man from the niche and said, "Come now, lend it to him and put it down to my account. God will repay thee." "Well," said the rich man, "I'll lend it to thee." So he lent it, and the poor man thanked him and returned to his home, full of joy. But the rich man was not content that God should give him back his loan by blessing him in his flocks and herds, and in his children, and in his health, and in the blessed fruits of the earth. He waited and waited for the poor man to come and pay him back his rouble, and at last went to seek him. "Thou son of a dog," he shouted before the house, why hast thou not brought me back my money? Thou knowest how to borrow, but thou forgettest to repay." Then the wife of the poor man burst into tears. "Oh, he would repay thee, indeed, if he were in this world," said she. "But lo now, he died but a little while ago." The rich man snarled at her and departed. But when he got home, he said to the icon, "A pretty surety thou art." Then he took St. Michael down from the niche, dug out his eyes, and began beating him. He beat St. Michael again and again, and at last he flung him into a puddle and trampled on him. "I'll gibbet thee for standing me surety so scurvily," said he. While he was thus abusing St. Michael, a young fellow about 20 years old came along that way, and said to him, "What art thou doing, my father?" "I'm beating him because he stood surety and has played me false. He took upon himself the repayment of a silver rouble, which I lent to the son of a pig, who has since gone away and died. That's why I'm beating him now." "Oh, beat him not, my father. I'll give thee a silver rouble. But do thou give me this holy image." "Take him if thou wilt, but see that thou bring me the silver rouble first." Then the young man ran home and said to his father, "Dad, give me a silver rouble." "Wherefore, my son?" "I would buy a holy image," said he. And he told his father how he had seen that heathen beating St. Michael. "Oh, nay, my son, whence shall we who are poor find a silver rouble to give to him who's so rich?" "Oh, nay, but give it to me, Dad." And he begged and prayed until he got it. Then he ran back as quickly as he could, paid the silver rouble to the rich man, and got the holy image. He washed it clean and placed it in the midst of sweet-smelling flowers, and so they lived on as before. Now this youth had 3 uncles, rich merchants who sold all manner of merchandise, and went in ships to foreign lands, where they sold their goods and made their gains. One day, when his uncles were again making ready to depart into foreign lands, he said to them, "Take me with you." "Why shouldst thou go?" said they. "We have wares to sell, but what hast thou?" "Yet take me," said he. "But thou hast nothing." "I will make laths and boards and take them with me," said he. His uncles laughed at him for imagining such wares as these, but he begged and prayed them till they were wearied. "Well, come along," they said, "though there's naught for thee to do. Only take not much of these wares of thine with thee, for our ships are already full." Then he made himself laths and boards. What is a lath? A thin, flat strip of wood, especially one of a series forming a foundation for the plaster of a wall or the tile. Oh, okay. Or made into a trellis or fence. Okay. Gotcha. And then he made him laths and boards and put them on board the ship, took St. Michael with him, and they departed. They went on and on. They sailed a short distance, and they sailed a long distance, till at last they came to another tsardom and another empire. And the Tsar of this tsardom had an only daughter, so lovely that the like of her is neither to be imagined nor divined in God's fair world, neither may it be told in tales. Now this Tsarivna one day went down to the river to bathe, and plunged into the water without first crossing herself, whereupon the evil spirit took possession of her. The Tsarivna got out of the water and straightway fell ill of so terrible a disease that it may not be told of. Do what they would, and the wise men and the wise women did their utmost, it was of no avail. In a few days she grew worse and died. Then the Tsar, her father, made a proclamation that people should come and read the prayers for the dead over her dead body, and so exorcise the evil spirit, and whosoever delivered her was to have half his power and half his tsardom. And the people came in crowds, but none of them could read the prayers for the dead over her. It was impossible. Every evening a man went into the church, and every morning they swept out his bones, for there was naught else of him remaining. And the Tsar was very wrath. "All my peoples will be devoured," he cried, and he commanded that all the foreign merchants passing through his realm should be made to read prayers for the dead over his daughter's body. "And if they will not read," said he, "they shall not depart from my kingdom." So the foreign merchants went one by one. In the evening a merchant was shut up in the church, and in the early morning they came and found and swept away his bones. At last it came to the turn of the young man's uncles to read the prayers for the dead in the church. They wept and lamented and cried, "Well, we're lost, heaven help us." Then the eldest uncle said to the lad, "Listen, good simpleton, it's now come to my turn to read prayers over the Tsarivna. Do thou go in my stead and pass the night in the church, and I'll give thee all my ship." "Nay, but," said the simpleton, "what if she tears me to pieces too? I won't go." But then St. Michael said to him, "Go and fear not. Stand in the very middle of the church, fenced round about with thy laths and boards, and take with thee a basketful of pears. When she rushes at thee, take and scatter the pears, and it will take her till cockcrow to pick them all up. But do thou go on reading thy prayers all the time, and look not up, whatever she may do." When night came, he took up his laths and boards and a basket of pears, and went to the church. He entrenched himself behind his boards, stood there, and began to read. At dead of night there was a rustling and a rattling. Oh, Lord, what was that? There was a shaking of the bier. Bang! Bang! And the Tsarivna arose from her coffin and came straight toward him. She leaped upon the boards and made a grab at him and fell back. Then she leaped at him again, and again she fell back. Then he took his basket and scattered all the pears. All through the church they rolled, she after them, and she tried to pick them up till cockcrow. And at the very first cock-a-doodle-doo she got into her bier again, and lay still. When God's bright day dawned, the people came to clean out the church and sweep away his bones. But there he was, reading his prayers, and the rumor of it went through the town, and they were all filled with joy. Next night it was the turn of the second uncle, and he began to beg and pray. "Oh, go thou, simpleton, in my stead. Look now, thou hast already passed a night there. Thou mayst very well pass another, and I'll give thee all my ship." But he said, "Oh, I won't go, I'm afraid." But then St. Michael said to him again, "Fear not, but go. Fence thee all about with thy boards, and take with thee a basket of nuts. When she rushes at thee, scatter thy nuts, and the nuts will go rolling all about the church, and it will take her till cockcrow to gather them all up. But do thou go on reading thy prayers, nor look thou up, whatever may happen." And he did so. He took his boards and the basket of nuts, and went to the church at nightfall and read. A little after midnight there was a rustling and an uproar, and the whole church shook. Then came a fumbling round him about the coffin. Bang! Bang! Up she started, and made straight for him. She leaped and plunged. She very nearly got through the boards. She hissed like seething pitch, and her eyes glared at him like coals of fire. But it was of no use. He read on and didn't once look at her. Besides, he scattered his nuts, and she went after them and tried to pick them all up till cockcrow. And at the first cock-a-doodle-doo, she leaped into her coffin again and pulled down the lid. In the morning the people came to sweep away his bones, and lo, they found him alive. The next night he had to go again in the third uncle's stead. Then he sat down and cried and wailed, "Alas, alas, what shall I do? 'Twere better I had never been born." But St. Michael said to him, "Weep not, 'twill all end happily. Fence thyself about with thy boards, sprinkle thyself about with holy water, incense thyself with holy incense, and take me with thee. She shall not have thee. And the moment she leaves her coffin, do thou jump quickly into it. And whatever she may say to thee, and however she may implore thee, let her not get into it again until she says to thee, 'My consort.'" So he went. There he stood in the middle of the church, fenced himself about with his boards, strewed consecrated poppy seed around him, incensed himself with holy incense, and read. About the middle of the night a tempest arose outside, and there was a rustling and a roaring, a hissing and a wailing. The church shook, the altar candelabra were thrown down, the holy images fell on their faces. O Lord, how awful! Then came a bang, bang from the coffin, and again the Tsarivna started up. She left her coffin and fluttered about the church. She rushed at the boards and made a snatch at him and fell back. She rushed at him again, and again she fell back. She foamed at the mouth, and her fury every instant grew worse and worse. She dashed herself about and darted madly from one corner of the church to the other, seeking him everywhere. But he skipped into the coffin with the image of St. Michael by his side. She ran all over the church seeking him. "He was here, and now he's not here," she cried. Then she ran farther on, felt all about her, and cried again, "He was here, and now he's not here." And at last she sprang up to the coffin, and there he was. Then she began to beg and pray him, come down, I'll try and catch thee no more. Only come down, come down." But he only prayed to God, and answered her never a word. Then the cock crew once. "Cock-a-doodle-doo." "Alas, come down, my consort," she cried. Then he came down, and they both fell on their knees and began praying to God, and wept sore, and gave thanks to God because he had had mercy on them both. And at dawn of day, crowds of people, with the Tsar at the head of them, came to the church. "Shall we find him reading prayers, or shall we only find his bones?" said they. And lo, there they both were, on their knees, praying fervently to God. Then the Tsar rejoiced greatly, and embraced both him and her. After that they had a grand service in the church, and sprinkled her with holy water, and baptized her again, and the unclean spirit departed from her. Then the Tsar gave the young man half his power and half his kingdom, but the merchants departed in their ships, with their nephew on board. They lived together, and time went on, and the young man still remained a bachelor, and was so handsome that words cannot describe it. But the Tsar lived alone with his daughter. She, however, grew sadder and sadder, and was no longer like her former self. So sorrowful was she. And the Tsar asked her, saying, "Wherefore art thou so sorrowful?" "I am not sorrowful, father," said she. But the Tsar watched her, and saw that she was sorrowful, and there was no help for it. Then he asked again, "Art thou ill?" "Nay, dear dad," said she, "I myself know not what is the matter with me." And so it went on, till the Tsar dreamt a dream, and in this dream it was said to him, Thy daughter grieves because she loves so much the youth who drove the unclean spirit out of her. And then the Tsar asked her, And dost thou love this youth? And she answered, I do, dear father. Then why didst thou not tell me before, my daughter? Said he. Then he sent for his hayducks. Hayduck. Then he sent for his hayducks and commanded them, saying, Go this instant to such and such a kingdom, and there you'll find the youth who cured my daughter. Bring him to me. Then they went on and on until they found him, and he took just the same laths and boards that he had made before, and went with them. The Tsar met him, and bought all his boards, and when they split them into pieces, lo, they were full of precious stones. Then the Tsar took him to his own house, and gave him his daughter, and they lived right merrily together. Now I don't know about that one. Let's read a little bit about this dude. Little Shorty says the blue vampire in Salem's Lot scares you to death. Yeah, some of the Salem's Lot stuff can be pretty cool. A hayduck, an outlaw who engaged in brigandage and irregular warfare against the Turks in the Slavic regions of the Ottoman Empire. A male servant or attendant dressed in semi-military Hungarian costume. Yeah, that was a weird story, that one. It was all over the place. I mean, why do we even need to be introduced to the dude who had who was owed the silver ruble at the beginning? There was a whole story to even get this like religious icon into the dude's hand, who then goes on to have the adventure later. Yeah, I don't know. It was all over the place. All right, let's just read a little bit about this author. Born in London in 1854, Robert Nisbet Bain was a British historian and linguist for the British Museum. Historians tell us that Bain was able to read and work with over 20 languages. His proficiency in languages led him to translating several books, including the Norwegian classic Weird Tales from Northern Seas. That sounds cool. He worked with fairy tales, including folklore from the Ukraine, with a collection known as Cossack fairy tales and folk tales. Bain also worked with Russian fairy tales and Turkish fairy tales. He contributed to the Encyclopedia Britannica, writing biographies for a number of esteemed individuals. In particular, Bain is known for his exhaustive biography on another fairy tale author, Hans Christian Andersen. Died in 1909. Oh, wasn't that old. 46, what's that, 55. Weird Tales. That Weird Tales from Northern Seas, that would be, yeah. That particular one, Weird Tales from Northern Seas. Yeah, anyway, so that was Robert Bain Nisbet. We should read, though, maybe. They're probably in here, some of these. But right now, that's about it, though. That is about it. So how did we end up just having... How many people just went... yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we just had a couple of people who they were actually like stream regulars. They're like, fairly newish, but they're still stream regulars. I've seen their names before. All of a sudden, just go crazy in chat. I don't get it. I don't get it. Not you, Kate. There's a little fishing village called in northeast England called Whitby. That place reeks of vampires. I can't say I've heard of that before. I mean, when you talk about vampires, I mean, like normally it's like an Eastern European kind of deal. Kate wasn't here? I didn't see Kate here. And there's vampires up in Alaska. Who knows what's happening? I don't. Anyway, that does bring us to the end of, I haven't seen 30 Days of Night. Don't think so. Oh, New Orleans. Yeah. I think that's more to do with Anne Rice than anything else, though. Oh yeah, I mean, she's a very influential author, but she introduced a new era, I think, for the whole vampire genre. Okay, so but that's it. That is it for me. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. We had, let's see where we at. We need to, you know, that's so weird. That thing just doesn't update properly. Don't know why. Have I been in, I should have been in... I gotta be in this thing. Why is the Mixer back end keeps changing? I don't know. I can't figure it out. It's insisting on the back end where you set it on the dashboard. It's insisting that I'm in a Fantasy Star right now, but yeah, obviously I'm not. I don't know. Who knows? Yeah, it was good. But those are some interesting stories there. Both of them, by the way, ended super abruptly, almost like they had no idea how to end it. And then kind of, yeah. So I mean, the first story, that sci-fi one, that was pretty cool, but. I mean, I wanted to know more about these homicidal, dope-smoking maniacs. That's what I wanted to know about. Yeah. Anyway, I need to take care of. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the reefer madness, man. Yeah, we can probably cover more of that a little later. But that's it. That is it. I need to end my stream. I have some IRL things I need to take care of. I will be back at 6 p.m. Pacific. With Suddenly. The name of the movie is Suddenly, with Frank Sinatra. So yeah, so we're going to get through that, do another episode of The Wolf Among Us, and then into some gaming. It'll be a good night. It's going to be a very good night. But yeah, I need to take. Good Lord, 29 subs this week. 29. That's just nuts. Wow. That is a lot. Okay. Thank you for all of those. It's very nice. But I already got one. Yeah, so I'm going to end the stream. I'm going to throw it over to probably just Chill Cat Radio. I think that'll be the way to do it. And I'll be back in 1 hour 45 minutes. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for, we're going to say goodbye to our friend over there on YouTube, Mr. Wesley West. Thank you for tuning in. And, oh yes, yeah, so all the rest of the stuff, all that gaming stuff, yeah, I'm not going to be streaming that over to YouTube later tonight, because every time I do, I get copyright strikes just day in, day out whenever I stream gaming over on YouTube. But you're welcome to come join us here on Mixer there, Wesley West, if you're up for, well, we have movie night coming up, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and then gaming. Very, very welcome to come join us over here on Mixer for that. Mixer.com/Carrington TV. That's our mainstream. Thank you, Lady Death. Thank you, Shadowtronics, for, what? That's another one. And more gift subs coming in. Good gracious. That was Shadowtronics subscribe to Stripe Sweater. Wow, very cool. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Wow, just when you think the weekly sub goal can't get any crazier, it just hit 30. That's nuts. That's nuts. I mean, my goal is normally 3. I don't know what's going on. You've been saving up the Microsoft points. You're getting there. It's little by little. They all add up. Yeah, they do. Yeah, and it's. I mean, I just generally use Microsoft Edge anyway, so I automatically just get points just for doing what I'm doing. So that's good. Anyway, there we go. You can't go wrong with a gift sub. I like that. Sub hype. Okay, very nice, very nice. So what was I saying? I was saying thank you, Lady Death. Thank you, Shadowtronics, for being on hand. To we did have a couple of troublemakers here. Very surprised me, but they were right on there, taking it. Little Shorty, thank you for spending some time here with us as well. We'll catch you all later. Congrats again, there, Striped Sweater. Kate Girl, always good to see you, even when you insist you're not here. Tillable Cat. We'll see you later there, Mrs. Shadowtronics. Thank you once again for the embers there. And everyone. Too many people to mention. Anyway, I'm back in 1 hour, 45 minutes here on Mixer with movie night. And who said they were missing all that movie night? That was, one second, I missed a bit. So much stuff going on. That was Striped Sweater. You've missed a few movies. Oh, by the way, there's an archive in the super secret section of Discord, by the way, where all these public domain movies are, of everything that we've watched and the next couple, which are also coming up as well. So just in case anyone is curious as to what we've been showing, they're all public domain. But I have a nice little archive collection of them. We'll catch you 1 hour, 45 minutes. I'm out of here. Thank you so much, and have a great night, everyone. Have a